live with it. I appreciate it nonetheless. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's strategy session. We have two items that we're dealing with, and the first one begins with Digital Kitchener, and then we're going to move on to our exciting new economic development strategy. But before that, we're going to talk all about ideas, innovation, and improvement. Digital Kitchener. Mr. Murray, over to you.
Great. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Mayor Urbanovic and members of Council. I'm excited to be here to discuss the Digital Kitchener project today. The purpose of the presentation today is to provide an update on the status of this corporate project, provide an overview of the initiatives underway, and successes resulting from our existing technology strategy, and to engage Council on specific questions to help confirm our approach and early priorities in the strategy. The project appears in the City's 2015 business plan under the name Corporate Technology Strategic Plan and Digital Strategy. The project was initially envisioned as two distinct bodies of work. The first body of work is a refresh of the existing Corporate Technology Strat Plan, which addresses the technology needs of the departments and divisions of the corporation. The second body of work was to explore opportunities to promote the use of technology and digital resources in the community through a digital strategy. As research began, it became evident we should approach the work as a single effort. We're still uncertain whether we will have a single strategy once complete, but we're confident that our approach will ensure that the resulting strategy will be holistic and synergies between inward and outward-facing initiatives can be maximized. The project was branded Digital Kitchener to reflect a made-in-Kitchener digital strategy. Digital Kitchener was first publicly used by Mayor Urbanovic in his State of the City speech in March. We expect the name will generate interest and awareness in the community as we begin public engagement. The project began at the start of the year. Research was completed on various community digital strategies as we worked on finalizing a project charter. The project was introduced to City staff in March through a series of information sessions where attendees were also asked to brainstorm ideas, both for the internal and external aspects of the strategy. Since June, nearly 50 interviews have taken place with members of Council, corporate management team, and various managers across the corporation. We are now beginning to turn our focus to the external consultation to help further shape the outward-facing aspects of Digital Kitchener. The goals of the inward-facing aspect of the project, the internal corporate technology needs, are to create a refreshed 5-year strategy that addresses all of the needs identified through the internal consultation process. We want to ensure that IT staff have significant input into developing the approaches to those needs, to ensure that the opportunities are developed with an eye on the final cost and the feasibility in our technology environment. We will have the resulting strategy reviewed by industry experts to ensure that we've considered all aspects. We want the strategy to continue to change the way staff interact through technologies, allowing staff to collaborate easier, communicate more effectively, and achieve higher levels of productivity and engagement. We also know we need to continue working on shifting the IT role from one of technology supplier to one of strategic technology innovator and business partner. And lastly, we want to ensure all aspects will be aligned to existing strategies, such as the recently adopted corporate strategy. The goals of the outward-facing aspect of the project, the community digital strategy, are to develop a community-rooted strategy that reflects the ideas and opportunities identified through public consultation and applies best practices wherever they may exist. We expect that a number of the opportunities that will be identified will require partnerships among other public sector entities, possibly private and public partnerships. We will need to distinguish the City's role in pursuing these opportunities. We will need to establish external networks among technology companies, community groups, and nonprofits, both in the consultation and implementation of the strategy. Finally, we would like Kitchener to be recognized as a leading smart city, a city that uses information and technology to improve our services and the quality of life for our community. 3 project values were identified for this project: ideas, innovation, and improvement. Each value aligns with the project objectives, best practices, and other corporate priorities. Ideas lead to innovation that can improve our processes and, in turn, develop opportunities. As we work through the development of Digital Kitchener, we will ensure that alignment to other strategies occurs to the extent possible. We have identified the following strategies, some of which are still under development, to explore possible touchpoints between the strategies. Through the research on various digital community strategies, 6 common themes have become evident. Those themes are open government, which are programs and policies that facilitate civic participation, promote collaboration, and ease of access to municipal records, the purpose being enhanced transparency and accountability. Engagement, government-led initiatives that seek to inform the decision-making process or identify solutions to community challenges by consulting or collaborating with the public. Access and infrastructure, which includes enhancing digital infrastructure, improving broadband access, expanded public Wi-Fi, and public innovation labs. Economy, partnerships, policies, and investments to support a digital economy. E-services, being able to leverage technology and applications to provide government services electronically. And education, creating opportunities to build digital literacy skills and the development of a technology-enabled learning environments. A number of these themes are areas that Kitchener has actually succeeded in pursuing various initiatives, which is a bit of a relief. As we got into this, I wasn't sure how far-reaching a digital strategy could be. It was a bit of a relief to find that we're actually pursuing a number of these areas quite well. We just hadn't had a holistic strategy to tie them together. As part of the development of Digital Kitchener, we're also reviewing the achievements and gains made since the 2010 Corporate Technology Strategy, for which a number of resulting initiatives are still underway. I wanted to highlight some of those specifics for Council. The Corporate Technology Strategic Plan consisted of 5 main recommendations and 4 strategic technology directions. The 5 main recommendations were implemented between 2011 and 2013. I'd like to focus today on the 4 strategic technology directions as work continues in those areas. The first strategic technology direction was to endorse and leverage our enterprise software systems. The City has a strong portfolio of enterprise applications that serve the needs of the organization well. The use of CityWorks has continued to evolve as the capability of the product increases, and the product is continually adapted to support new business processes for work order management. PeopleSoft, an assessment was completed that recommended that we continue to invest effort in the product, and a number of initiatives are underway. The City is also well underway to move our Customer Information System, or CIS, tax and utility billing system into the SAP environment. This will consolidate 2 major enterprise systems and allow us to focus our IT resources on supporting one software environment. The second strategic direction was the enhancement of customer service through technology. In 2014, Phase 2 of the customer service strategy was completed, and as part of that, an e-services strategy was also developed. Through the 2015 budget process, Council approved the acquisition of the Lagan Customer Relationship Management System through the partnership with the Region of Waterloo. That project is well underway and aims to have the new CRM in place to meet the needs of the contact centre, Mayor's Office, and by law enforcement by March 2016. Ongoing enhancements to both the website, or to e-services on both the website and through Ping Street, the City's mobile app, continue to evolve and add additional e-services. There's a significant level of collaboration occurring among the local municipalities within the region to ensure that we're approaching e-services in a common manner. Other major initiatives underway, such as the internet redesign and public portal project, will also bring significant improvements to e-services. The third strategic direction was internal collaboration through technology. In 2014, the City completed the Corporate Integrated Communications Network, which saw the implementation of voice over IP across the entire organization, replacing our legacy roam phone system. We now have a very capable platform on which to build for collaborative technologies. IT has been piloting Cisco Jabber, which enables instant messaging presence and enables both voice and video capabilities for both desktop and mobile users. We're also looking to roll out web conferencing capabilities in 2016, again building on that existing voice over IP platform. Boardroom technologies are being updated and improved to allow city staff to collaborate, reduce the need for paper, and potentially reduce travel costs between city sites. The city's intranet is also currently under review to look at building collaborative and social functions into it to improve the overall utility of the intranet, especially for staff who do not or cannot regularly access it now. The fourth strategic direction was the increased use of mobile computing technology. A comprehensive strategy was developed in 2013. In 2014, Council approved the addition of staff to support the implementation of the mobile strategy. I'm going to spend a few minutes to highlight what has been achieved in this specific area. With the needed resources, staff had been able to move a number of the main goals of the mobile computing strategy forward. Achievement of these goals are critical to the ability of IT staff to be able to support increased mobile computing across the organization. We've made great progress and the work continues. We've been able to deploy a number of mobile solutions that have led to better increased staff efficiency, reduced travel time, and improved data collection. We've begun to outfit the sanitary sewer supervisors with mobile tablets and printers. This allows them to spend more time in the field directing staff activities, supervising work, and investigating service requests before work orders are issued. They spend less time in the office and estimate they save an hour a day of travel, which saves time, reduces wear and tear on vehicles, and has significant environmental benefits as well. We've outfitted fire prevention officers with large Android smartphones that allow them to take notes, pictures, and dictate voice notes to allow them to quickly and accurately perform inspections. The officers also use the phone as a mobile hotspot, allowing them to connect back to the office as needed to prevent unnecessary trips. The laptop replaces their desktop in the office. Fire Prevention estimates this solution has created efficiencies that have saved them a minimum of 1 hour per week per inspector and further reduced travel by an hour a week as well. Property standards staff and bylaw have been using a laptop in the past, but due to challenges with ergonomics in the vehicles, the benefits were not being fully realized. Staff worked with property standards folks to determine the best form factor to help them better utilize that technology. Staff are now using an Android Note 4 smartphone that allows them to securely access required applications in the field. Inspection results can be provided immediately as needed with a mobile printer. Laptops have been eliminated and a single desktop computer in the office is shared among staff when they need to complete more complex reports. Staff are in the office less and able to spend more time in the field. Staff estimate an hour a week has been saved in time and another hour of travel has been reduced. Another recent mobile addition is the city's traffic coordinator. A laptop and mobile printer has allowed the coordinator to spend more time in the field working with road closure permit requests and less time in the office entering information. Permits can be printed on site where needed and signage requests can be handled more efficiently. A new mobile application developed by our IT staff has also enabled real-time information to be made available online through our website and through Ping Street. The solution has made the process more efficient and has also significantly improved information available to the community. Utilities locators have been using a mobile solution mostly to look up drawings in the field to perform a locate. The process was recently improved with the addition of a multifunctional scanner and printer. Locators now can perform the work in the field, complete the required document, scan it, and provide a copy immediately to the homeowner or contractor on site. This additional functionality alone has saved an hour a day of travel time for each locator. Increased customer service, higher efficiency, and environmental benefit as a result. Engineering construction inspectors recently piloted a solution using a laptop and mobile printer. Again, the laptop replaced the desktop computer in the office. The laptop allows them to spend more time on-site inspecting construction, updating as-built documentation, and being visibly available on-site to deal with any resident concerns. All project documentation is available to them in the field, and copies can be printed off as needed for reference. The solution is estimated to have saved 4 hours a week of time, primarily travel time for the inspector who's piloted it. It'll now be rolled out to 3 others performing the same role. Staff have been tracking the anticipated benefits of each mobile solution as they're being developed and following up to review with staff afterwards to ensure they were accurate. Lessons learned are being captured and applied to all future mobile solutions. The solutions I've quickly reviewed today are just some of the mobile deployments. The overall benefit of the implementations outlined just today have led to the following operational efficiencies. 3,825 hours a year in staff time has been saved, which calculated out comes out over 2 FTEs per year. 54,000 kilometers a year of travel within the city has also been avoided. The really good news here is that we're just getting started with mobile technology. Referring back to the 4 strategic directions of the 2010 Corporate Technology Strat Plan, Council has seen this graphic a number of times, as this customer service vision is common among a number of our strategies. 3 of the existing strategic technologies remain critical to realizing this vision: enhancing customer service through technology, leveraging enterprise systems, and mobile computing. Through the outreach we've completed already, it's clear to us that all of the strategic technology directions remain valid and will continue to play an important role in a refreshed technology strategy. There are many new technologies that have emerged over the last 15 years that we need to consider in a new technology strategy. Cloud computing. Cloud computing at its core is the commoditization of technology services. There remain many concerns moving services to the cloud for a municipality, but we need to consider and continue in this direction. As cloud offerings mature and security and access concerns are improved, we can potentially move base technology services into the cloud, allowing us to free up staff resources to work on higher value strategic technology innovation. The Internet of Things is the addition of networked smart devices that allow control, monitoring, and optimization of things. Examples of such solutions that would come into play with the city are smart lighting systems, smart parking, sensors for monitoring, and smart metering systems. As we begin to collect more information from those devices, analytics will allow us the ability to process large quantities of data. The result can be a real-time service level, an operational dashboard, as well as predictive analytics. Predictive analytics can also work with smart devices to adjust to changes in the environment automatically. An example of that could be smart lighting, which will adapt as environmental situations change. We are about to enter the public consultation phase for Digital Kitchener. Staff have developed a public engagement plan that includes the following activities. We've been working with Mayor Urbanovic to organize a Mayor's Committee on Digital Kitchener, where we plan to gather tech-minded people with a community focus to help generate ideas and identify opportunities to consider in the strategy. We plan to engage each of the Council advisory committees. We're working with communications to develop a to develop an engagement plan for public using a digital town hall and social media channels. We've had initial discussions with Kitchener Public Library and the local post-secondary institutions to explore engagement opportunities. We formed a working relationship with the Year of Code Waterloo Region Initiative, who has agreed to undertake consultation on our behalf with their wide-reaching audience. Staff participated in the KEDS Symposium to gather ideas for Digital Kitchener, and we are in discussions with community services staff to ensure any opportunities that may arise in the development of the neighbourhood strategy can be exploited fully. We're also considering the use of hard copy questionnaires in community centres and libraries as we engage in the public consultation. Although we're still early in the process, the following topics have emerged as early priority areas. Interest has been very high for expanding public Wi-Fi availability in city facilities, public parks, and event areas. Ensuring that Kitchener will be well served by fiber optic broadband connectivity and high-speed internet is important for both establishing Kitchener as a technology-enabled community and for making sure that companies that locate here have the connectivity they need. Investing in smart city solutions that provide community benefit and can streamline city operations. Business intelligence is the ability of an organization to leverage available data to assist in decision making. And mentioned earlier, dashboards allow that same data to provide real-time indicators of performance from either a service or financial perspective. Smart infrastructure in the Internet of Things. We also need to consider how to address the digital divide as we move ahead with initiatives, ensuring those who are either technologically or financially disadvantaged have the same opportunities. And finally, we need to do a better job in tooting our own horn and sharing our technology successes that we have. Finish off with some questions of council to help confirm our approach and help shape our early priorities in the strategy. There is a specific question on Wi-Fi as we plan to invest in 2016 with the funding through the Canada 150 program. We want to ensure that our planning work that is underway is in line with council expectations. So I'll turn it over to Mayor Urbanovic for the questions.
Sure, thank you. So everyone's had an opportunity now to take a look at the presentation or go through the presentation that staff had, and there's a number of questions that staff have of us to take them through for your input as council. So the first question is, have we missed any of the key stakeholders in our public consultation plan, and any specific feedback suggestions with respect to the public consultation? And Paul, Councillor Singh, you were clicked in.
Paul's just fine too.
No, well, apologies.
No, that's fine. Dan, a really good presentation. I think I appreciate you going through and showing, where we've come from 2010 with the corporate technology strategy plan. So it's good to see what we've been implemented and what the benefits have come. Quick answer to the question that's out there: as additional partners, have you looked at Kitchener-Wilmot Hydro? Again, with their existing infrastructure, how we could better align ourselves, especially when we have high-arching kind of endeavor and goals, for example, high-speed fiber or more additional, public space Wi-Fi, as well as a similar thing with the region as well. Consultation with the region as they're implementing their work plan for the LRT. This is something we've discussed, but again, what additional measures, advantages we can take of that work that's in process right now. Okay.
And I think that'll sort of comes up in question 3, which we'll get to in a minute, just the whole Wi-Fi piece. But.
Yeah. I wanted to jump my queue.
Okay. Councillor Fernandez.
So I have a lot of questions really just from the original presentation, but my first question is, why weren't we given these questions beforehand so we had a chance to review, to really think about the questions while we were reading the report?
My apologies for that. It was simply timing. They were included in the presentation, which did not make the council package.
Okay, it's just that it's hard to be thinking about these questions, considering that if you really want good input, we really need to get our heads around it, and doing that after a 10-minute presentation is challenging, I think. So my first question, when I'm looking at your report, so I'm going to probably have to cue in again, is the buzzwords that you have around open government engagement, access, infrastructure, economy, e-services, and education you're duplicating a number of them when you talk about collaboration and enhancing and leveraging, but I'm still not very clear as to what the goal is of this strategy, and call me blind or old-fashioned or whatever. I mean, yes, I see we want to have a 5-year strategy. Yes, we want to have a peer review. We're going to involve the way staff interact. I mean, are we missing the boat on every single one of these inward-facing goals? And what are we missing on our outward-facing goals?
So just before you respond, I mean, the way you had this laid out, Mr. Murray, was you had the 3 questions, and then you had questions and answers from questions from council on your overall presentation at the end. It actually may make sense to do those first now, and then we can go through your 3 questions. So if everybody can put their head around that, if you have questions of Mr. Murray's presentation, as Councillor Fernandez is doing now, and then we'll go to the 3 facilitated questions after that. So if you want to respond to Councillor Fernandez's question then.
Certainly. So the goal is to have a updated strategy. It's really the first time we've ever considered the external community-based how technology can be improve the lives of the citizens, which is a new part. We've always had a technology strategic plan of one form or another, and this was intended to be updated and a refresh of that to really provide guidance over the next 5 years. It is, with this new aspect, we're looking at trying to tie the 2 together, and I think through the themes that we've seen, we've achieved a number of gains in those areas already, but it hasn't been done with a clear overarching strategy in terms of how technology can be leveraged. And the intent here is to have that look that can guide our work for the next 5 years in both of those areas to help make the most of the technology investments that we're going to be bringing back to Council.
Okay, so you used a good word here. You used the word investment. So I want to understand, when you're saying investment, what is the investment for us as a city? What is this going to cost us? Because everything comes with a price tag. And you've got economy as listed as one of your themes, partnerships, policies, and investments, again, to support a digital economy. What does that mean? I think we have to understand this is all really wonderful ideas and strategies, and we're really reaching out to the public and we're reaching inward. But what's it going to cost us? If it's going to cost us, tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars, we need to understand the rationalization of why would we support this strategy. If it means that we're going to be hiring, 2, 3, 4, 5 more staff people, we need to be able to explain that to our constituents as to why we're doing this.
Certainly, and at this point, there's no costs associated with the development of the strategy. Certainly, the initiatives that come forward will have costs associated with them. Those will come forward as future items for Council's consideration. I think the most important part is to ensure that the money that we are looking to invest in technology is being maximized, and whether that be the money that we would spend already through the next 5 years of supporting our environment, to really have a focus and an intended outcome through this strategy of how to best use those dollars and make the most of them.
So what have we invested already?
In terms of this strategy, we have it's staff time at this point. We have not spent any money on the strategy development.
But staff time costs money. So Certainly. How many FTE hours have we used on this strategy so far? I mean, we've had, public consultation inward with staff. That takes time. How much time have we spent, and what does that cost equal out to?
I don't have the exact answer in terms of the hours that have been spent and the various people. We could certainly provide some estimates on that.
Okay, so personally I need to have an understanding of that before I can approve a strategy. It's the same thing as with, we have master plans. We've been talking about all kinds of master plans. Maybe, and it's wonderful to prove it in principle, but if we don't have an understanding of what the cost implications are going to be, how can we knowledgeably support that? So my other question is...
Hold on, we've had a point of order. Councillor Davey?
Sorry, I can't listen to much more of this in terms of us approving a strategy or anything else. This is for discussion. We're at the beginning stages of getting public feedback. We're not approving anything today. It's a consultation session for us to provide the ideas that staff should be looking at so they can bring a strategy back that we can argue whether we should approve or not. And the dollars and everything else will flow through that.
Well, I'm speaking for myself personally, Councillor Davey.
Okay, but if you have
So my-
questions, Councillor Fernandez, if you have questions about the presentation and the information presented, feel free to ask those. Otherwise, the intent of this session is to have a facilitated dialogue with some specific questions that staff would like some answers on. So that's what we're focusing
So I
on.
have a couple more
Okay,
questions.
you got one more question? Time for one more?
When we talk about cross-functional work teams in the report, can you help me understand what that means?
So as we get more engagement and we've got an understanding of what the topic areas are, we want to bring staff together for a little bit more work. So areas of consideration could be things like business intelligence. Business intelligence might be a topic area where there'll be a number of stakeholders who would be identified in that. We don't want to create a solution that doesn't consider their input. We want to make sure that as we move forward with that, we'll bring the appropriate people together and develop strategies to support those particular topic areas that are appropriate for the organization. And that could be both from the internal and external perspectives. If there are stakeholders in the community that we need to engage a little bit further to explore an opportunity that's been identified, we'd like to do that so we have clarity within the recommendations that will come forward in the strategy.
Thanks.
Councillor Gazzola?
No other questions?
No, there's other people behind you.
Oh, I just punched in. I,
Well, two people punched in after you. There you go.
I can't get over that service. I really had some questions along the same lines as Councillor Fernandez because I'm not sure where we're going here. But just why is this here? Who has asked for this to come? Did we ask for this?
It was identified in the 2015 business plan for a refresh of the corporate technology strategic plan, and we've included the community digital strategy part of that, which we had heard. I'm not sure if there was staff direction on that particularly, but it was certainly identified as an area of interest for council, and it was brought forward through the business plan for approval.
Well, that was going to be next. We had a list of 179 projects. Was this one of them, or?
This would have been one of them.
And would it have been marked as in progress, or?
When it was originally approved, it would have been a new initiative.
But on that list of 179, was it in progress?
Okay. So this is in progress in that list.
Yeah. The other question I have, this requires additional staff, does it not? This is over and above what you're already doing.
The intent for this strategy is not to increase staff. There may be initiatives that council decides that comes forward with this strategy that they want to invest in. If we do not have staff, there may be additional staff required. Our intent is not to increase staff headcount in any way based on producing this strategy. Should those initiatives be an area that council wants to pursue, those would be identified individually through the appropriate processes.
Well, I'm just curious, there are areas that you're currently working on that are of importance to our ratepayers, such as what? Such as the billing system. Where does that stand in relation to this?
So I highlighted a number of initiatives that are underway, and those are really as a result of the 2010 strategy. And a number of those initiatives do continue on. They're long-term projects. So I provided updates on those in the presentation. This is really intended to define the pathway going forward for the next 5 years as we complete those and make sure that we are putting our technology investments and our staff time towards valuable strategic projects for technology.
Okay, but isn't it really difficult, going back to what Councillor Fernandez is saying, isn't it difficult to plan a strategy going forward not knowing what it might cost. I mean, is it just a wish list, or I mean, you don't do this at home, do you? If you have plans going forward, you have to have some idea of what it's going to take.
Okay, but Councillor Gazzola, the point is, staff have undertaken this work. The purpose of the session today is for them to present where they are thus far and to provide some questions, which we're trying to get to, but everybody seems to have lots of other questions around some areas that they would like some council input on. That's the purpose of today's suggestion. Your concerns and questions around costs, quite frankly, can't be answered until you have a strategy, because until you know what your strategy is and what particular projects are going to come out of that strategy, it's hard to speculate what the cost might be.
Well, isn't all that part of the strategy? How can you just have, if you just have a strategy, it's just a wish list? Now,
Mr. Chapman?
Through Mr. Mayor, and I may be repeating the comments that have been made already, we're here primarily because we want to seek your direction before we engage the public. We hear often when we put a strategy in front of you that you've not discussed at an interim level, that we missed consultation, that we didn't consult in the right way, and so we want to make sure that we have a proper consultation process mapped out. That's our first question. But we also agree with you that the sky's the limit for this strategy. There is a risk here that IT could be pulled in a million different directions. We have a list of 7 emerging priorities. There are dozens more that could be of interest to this corporation. The whole goal of the strategy is to shortlist that, define it, as we did in 2010, identify perhaps 4 directions that we all concur are important for this organization, so that this does not become essentially a blank check or a bottomless pit in terms of the cost. So yes, our goal would be, once we have priorities identified, to give you a sense as to what it would cost to implement them, so that you're not approving a direction and essentially handing a blank check to staff at that point, not knowing what the cost could be to implement. But again, for clarity, there is no strategy yet. Primarily, we're looking for your direction on how we consult and what's important to you as we approach that consultation.
Okay, so with that in mind, any specific questions that folks feel they need to have answered, we'll take. Otherwise, we're going to move on to the 3 questions that staff would like some input on. And if folks have broader questions, they can have some of those offline with staff. Councillor Davey.
Thank you. So just, basically I wanted, if you could, Mr. Murray, you went very quickly in terms of the mobile computing you said for Kitchener Utilities staff. I believe you said with the mobile technology they added an extra, those members of staff that received it, freed up an extra hour a day.
The specific example was the utility locators, and being able to provide, let me just find my notes here again, being able to provide and scan the actual product document they create and get it to the folks on site rather than having to come back into the office and create that and fax it out has saved them an hour a day of travel time.
So we're essentially now getting 9 hours of work where you got 8 before.
That would be one way to look at it.
That's the point I'm trying to make. Yep. And you also mentioned, because they don't have to travel more, how many thousands of kilometers were saved, even though we're on a small scale for mobile computing at this point?
For all of the items that I outlined today, the total is estimated at 54,000 kilometers a year.
54,000 kilometers.
And that's a variety of different vehicles. Some are personal vehicles and mileage rates would be charged. Others are fleet vehicles and would incur the costs of those vehicles.
Thank you kindly. I will have questions on number 1 as well, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. So I'll come back to you for number 1. Councillor Yanetsky.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the presentation and how you've made progress in your PowerPoint here with working with internally with staff and providing them with equipment and saving hours and mileage. I think that's moving forward, and I like that. I have a couple of questions here in terms of the 2 slides that were just before this question 1, and I'm just trying to understand. In emerging priorities, you talked about smart infrastructure, and then you have a symbol LO-T. I'm just trying to understand, what does that mean?
Yes, so the world of acronyms in IT, that is the acronym that has been used for Internet of Things.
So Internet.
Internet of Things. So it's really about devices that we would consider dumb devices before they had a function. They would make a measurement and make a decision. Now they can be connected to a network and they can provide more information back to a control system. So items that would fall into that would be, there's a number of areas within homes where this is becoming the normal. Your thermostats can actually be accessed through the internet and you can make changes. So the networking of a home thermostat allows you a level of control you wouldn't never have had before. There's a number of areas within a municipality where that type of smart infrastructure can help monitor and manage the environment of the city remotely and through control systems.
Okay, appreciate that. Slide before, this one here, the public engagement one, you identify a number of ways of trying to communicate public at large through social media, Twitter, digital townhouse, town hall, I should say. You move down to the next one, you've got Year of Code Waterloo Region. What does that mean?
Sure, that is the initiative that has started. They did their launch at City Hall on, I'm going to say, July 4th. It's a year-long initiative where they're aiming to increase the digital literacy of the population of the Waterloo Region area. So they're engaging children, they're engaging seniors, engaging people of all sorts of different ages to help them get over their fear of using technology and helping them become better users of technology. So it's a program that's been funded through a lot of through funding. I think Communitech has sponsored them. There's another other supporting groups that have sponsored their functions, and they're prepared to work with us to help do some consultation on behalf of us to poll the folks that they're working with and gather intelligence really to help inform our strategy. Interesting
that you mentioned that. When I think about communicating with my constituents, neighbors around me, just we get on a variety of topics and how they personally get their information. A lot of them, they don't even have computers, don't even have Blackberries or any of this stuff. They're not onto social media. They still just rely on watching TV and reading the newspaper and getting, stuff in the mail, basically. So if you're trying to do this public engagement, and I know us basically that are in this business and are working, we have our own Blackberries, we're engaged with it. Staff is doing their things with advancing things internally with their different departments and expediting things. But still with the general public, I find that, some of them do have that and are aware of what's happening and get onto Ping Street and whatever, but there's many, many more that just don't even have any devices and not interested. How are we going to communicate with them?
So that is our hope, to learn through these through this outreach. What are the challenges and how to help with that? One of the theme areas is education. So are there programs that we can foster, either working with the libraries to help those folks become more technologically savvy and be able to engage with the various initiatives that might come out of this strategy?
Well, I'll challenge that. I find a lot of the residents just aren't interested. They just says, I can't be bothered or whatever. I'll just still rely on my old means. So that's just, some comments. But some are interested. So
there is hard copy questionnaires.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Schneider, I've got to come to you. Councillor Davey.
Are we to question one?
We're not there yet. Sorry, I came back to you.
Cue me back in.
Sorry, Councillor Ioannidis was next in the queue.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Vravanovich. Thanks, Dan, for your presentation. I guess my question is based on whether there was a merit for you to provide some of the statistics on how communication is being done at the city by residents, like how many residents are communicating with the city by phone, how many people are communicating by email, how many people are communicating by social media, because I think being, I think that would definitely, make a clear case that this is obviously not a wish list. This is how people communicate today. And so I think that would make a lot more sense for a lot of other individuals here to understand this a little better. Has that been done?
We haven't done that as part of this. Certainly a very good suggestion for us to consider in terms of the strategy, though, to show a shifting population towards electronic engagement. And
Okay. Mr. Chapman, you wanted to add something?
Through Mr. Mayor, I appreciate the reminder because it does occur to me that Environics did pose questions to constituents about how they do and would prefer to interact with the city, and there were some strong themes in there around electronic engagement, so we'll go back and take a look at those.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Fernandez?
I just wanted to, before I get to question, you provided us with some significant numbers in regards to what we saved with FTEs and kilometers. But I guess the balance should be what for each one of those sections that you mentioned, what is the total number of hours that would have been spent on that before? Similar to what Councillor Ioannidis is asking, if we want to understand where the public is going with their usage of electronics and social medias and internet and such, we also need to understand if we're saving an hour a week or an hour a day, how many other hours, what were we spending before? So I know that might be a little bit harder for you to find. So I'm going to just jump into question one, is when you talk about stakeholders and things are moving very, very fast. I spoke to an entrepreneur this weekend who was telling me some things that blew me away, Bitcoin and levels of manufacturing. As we move through this strategy, how can we be sure we're going to capture the stakeholders? So the seniors was one area, but also the financially, and you mentioned that, people who financially may not be able to afford all of the, or any devices that would help them communicate with the city. So those are two stakeholders I think would answer your question, and we will have hard copies, but we still want to keep the mobile, we want to still keep technology moving forward, right? Will some of that hold us back?
Certainly, through the development of the strategy, our hope is to look at, as I mentioned, the digital divide, and that's really about folks who, as you build in these initiatives, how do you manage to include them? So we have a number of programs already, like our Connect KW machines that we have at our community centers. Even the public Wi-Fi helps to make things available that wouldn't be otherwise available. So that's certainly an important area for that strategy and to be able to include as part of the initiatives out of that.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Davey, on question one.
On question one, okay. Pardon me. It's not that it's so much of a missed stakeholder, but without jumping too far into the item that's coming up next, economic development, it strikes me that a big portion of this with respect to the, especially with respect to the high-speed fiber internet, should really be leveraged between those two departments. Is that actively underway? Is there anything that we can do to make sure that those resources are balanced?
So we've had a number of meetings, as you're aware. There is still lots of work to do in that area. Economic development and myself have had follow-up discussions with various groups, but there's still considerable work to pursue in that.
Okay. For public consultation, again, if we're looking at specifically the Wi-Fi and high speed, I think it's now at a stage where we should be engaging perhaps with local internet service providers, the Bells and the Rogers and the Tech Savvies of the world, to see where their models lie, what the costing of that is, see if they'll share any information in terms of where their fiber is. And I would also strongly suggest that we engage the City of Waterloo and the region to see if there's any sort of collaboration we can have with great respect to the LRT spine coming down. And as I've said in the past, I would love to see some sort of model where the region leaves it to the municipalities to work out a digital strategy, but they would match some sort of funding because it would benefit the region as a whole.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Schneider?
Yes, thank you. In regards to question one, missing any key stakeholders, I don't know if it's missed, but I might suggest Communitech and partners as people who develop a lot of apps and things like that. They may have some input on that. And as for part two, any feedback, suggestions, making sure that we know what our citizens want from technology and what they want technology to allow them to do. Thank you.
Councillor Ioannidis?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Urbanovic. I think one of the groups that I think is missing that could be part of the stakeholders is the Chamber of Commerce. I think their members and all that would probably have a key stake in wanting to know how the city is progressing, because they probably are dealing with the similar issues, as well as I think the Manufacturing Innovation Network I think would be another key stakeholder, because they're probably in that process of having their own digital strategy and how they're going through their manufacturing processes. So I think it would be good for them to be involved with that discussion.
Councillor Marsh?
Thank you. Yes. So just to continue with the request to find out how do people want to be engaged based on the Environics data, it would be good for you to, as you're going forward with the public consultation, to hopefully make it easy for you to gather data on whether or not these people are frequently engaging with customer services that we provide already, or whether they are just occasional users, or perhaps people who have never used it. And I would like to see, when you roll up your data, that if you hadn't yet engaged people, for example, who had never used our customer services in the past, that you would outreach and find some. Because we not only want to engage the frequent users, but we want to engage those who have yet to be or are reluctant to use our digital services. And to take a diversity lens on who you're engaging. So beyond the frequency of their use, but also to look at newcomer groups, look at different income levels, look at different neighborhoods within our city. So we're not just getting those who are already engaged, but people from all over the city as well. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Galloway-Seelock?
Just following up on Councillor Marsh's last point there, maybe it would be something to put some of the hard copy questionnaires at the Multicultural Center or other organizations like that to try and assist in trying to get some feedback. And the other group that I was thinking that we may want to send either a separate type survey or questionnaire, or the same one that you're going to develop, is to the neighborhood associations. To our neighborhood associations. I wouldn't want presentations or staff to go. I think they have a lot of that already, so I think just asking them to fill out as a collective either a questionnaire or survey may be something that's easy enough for them to do to provide their input.
Okay, just from my perspective, a number of the things that others have raised with respect to question one have been covered. I do think that looking at New Canadians, because the more I've sort of been reflecting on this over the last little while, it's clear that we tend to miss a lot of those groups in terms of our normal engagement, and there's a whole pile of reasons why, and maybe we can explore that somewhat. But the other one that comes to mind is specifically reaching out to youth, and I know we have kayak covered off through our council advisory committees, but maybe there's something we can do more broadly, engaging through the high schools or some of that to engage them a little bit in this issue, because ultimately they're they're the ones that probably get this tech stuff more than most of us in many ways. So that, I think, looks like it's it for number one. We'll go to numbers 2 and 3, and I'm going to do them combined and ask people to provide any comment or feedback on both of them, just because I'm cognizant of time and we need to spend a good chunk of time on economic development. So number 2 is considering the emerging priorities that Dan went through, and there were 7 of them. What areas would you like to see Kitchener pursue aggressively? And then the third question was, public Wi-Fi has been identified as an earlier priority. What's your reaction on the following? Either explore public-private partnerships to the reach of our public Wi-Fi to extend the reach of our public Wi-Fi with limited funds, or partner with public institutions to develop a branded region-wide public Wi-Fi network. Councillor Marsh.
All right, so I'll just respond to question 2. One of the things that comes to mind in particular when I look through what would we most benefit from a refresh on this digital strategy is we really need to look at the user experience. We need to understand how can we improve on the ease of use and on efficiency when people are trying to get to the right page. We want to consider how are they thinking about it, and how are we making it easier for them to whether it's sign up for coming to be a delegate at council, whether it's to learn more about leaf collection, to all of the different reasons why people engage with the city. So our communications team, I think, would be another internal stakeholder to make sure that we're, understanding how are we communicating the digital in a digital way, in a more efficient way.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Mayor Urbanovic. To answer question number 2, I think the Internet of Things is the way to go, and I think, to me, that is by far a no-brainer. Like, we need to do that as of right away because, and for those who might not understand what Internet of Things is, it's similar to, let's say, like Rogers at Home, where you have your own security, and I'm plugging Rogers which I don't like to do. But anyways, it's something that, monitor your home, monitor, when your garage door is closed, everything else. All those principles could be applied to the city in so many ways, with lighting, with security, it's numerous. And I think the potential savings there would be significant, and the amount of efficiency that would be created would be enormous. So I think that, without a doubt, is where we need to go. As far as question number 3, to answer them, yes. That's something that, whatever makes the most business case, best sense for our public as well, that's the route we need to go. Whether or not we even explore our own utility, whatever makes the best business case, I think that's the route we need to go. And I see huge opportunity is there as well, and the economic impact could be significant as well. So, I mean, yes to those.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Davey.
Thank you. So on question number 2, I've always been a big pusher of Wi-Fi, but I really do think that the area we should push in the near term is the full exploration of broadband. And by that I mean laying fiber, because realistically, wherever you see Wi-Fi, the first thing you need a fiber connection nearby. So I really see the Wi-Fi piece falling out from the broadband piece. And I would also point out that broadband is absolutely critical for the Internet of Things, for example, and all the fantastic things that are much closer on the horizon than people think. In terms of, there will be a time when people don't have to complain about a dying tree because there will be a sensor in the soil that automatically emails our staff on that green bag that says this tree needs some water, the soil's down low, and it gets dealt with without the residents even having to intervene. These are the sorts of things that are much nearer term than people realize, and the key to that is making sure we have built out and affordable broadband structure. So that would be the single area that I would say that we need to bump up in terms of priority.
Councillor Fernandez?
I'm kind of confused in terms of, I'm hearing things like efficiency and some of the broadband, trying to understand exactly how do we prioritize that. When you're saying emerging priorities, and I was looking through the report and I hear reference to 7 priorities, so maybe I'm missing, because I only counted 5.
On page 9, the second slide, there's 7 of them that were listed there.
Page 9. Okay. So that's the public engagement piece then.
Those are emerging priorities based on the work that staff have done thus far. So they're asking us to comment on those. Are there any that they would like to see us pursue more aggressively?
Gotcha. Okay. Thanks. I didn't sort of connect the two, and I apologize. I was looking at the other things that you had put into your report. I think what's really important from the community that I represent in Ward 4 would be lessening the digital divide. I have such a diverse community between international students and seniors and socioeconomic discrepancies that one of the things we have to make sure that we do if we move forward on a strategy is understanding the complexity of all those different components in our community. Can you help me understand maybe and again, maybe I missed it, the smart city initiatives? I mean, there's a lot of information in your presentation, but I'm not sure that I'm connecting the dots on the smart city initiative.
Dan, would you like to comment on that?
Sure. So smart city initiatives are really about cities that will leverage technology and information to improve the lives of the community. So it can be implementation of things like the Internet of Things. It can be providing high-speed broadband. They're really just a larger group of promoting technology within the community to raise that level, and they title it as a smart city.
Okay, so in a way, it encompasses a couple of these other priorities. That it's just another sort of
Correct.
Component to that.
Yep.
Okay.
Councillor Singh?
Yes, thank you. And I just wanted to make sure I echo some of the comments said earlier about the need for planning for the future for gigafiber, for broadband fiber across the city, especially as development happens and we expand out along those routes, as well as, of course, in our existing infrastructure as well. And that can only be done, I think, because the costs related through partnerships, through public partnerships and public-private partnerships, as well as our, and I said this already, our existing partners with Gitcham Hydro, the region, City of Waterloo. We need to ensure that it's far-reaching than just our city alone. It's a regional-wide initiative. And I think it could be something that encompasses as part of the RED strategy as well. Because, of course, the benefit would be to the entire area here. And for public Wi-Fi access, I think that's just more of a need, and it speaks to that digital divide. I think many of us own some sort of device that can access the internet, but because of economic discrepancies, perhaps not everyone can afford to have easy access to internet. And when we have public access of Wi-Fi easily available, they can touch and tune into the many services that we've incorporated within our corporate strategy. So I think that's a fundamental point going forward as well.
Thank you. Councillor Gazzola?
Yeah. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. I apologize for some of the questions that I asked because I didn't have this other document. I'm going from the document that was in our mail, and it was quite light, quite frankly. And I was particularly, there was a sentence in there that said, staff is beginning to have a clear understanding of what a new strategy may look like. To me, it sort of stated that you're not really sure where you're going. So I was a little concerned about all this. I've heard a lot of information about what you've done already, and it was my fault that I couldn't be here on time, so I started to look, and it's not really included here. Is it possible to get some more details on what you obviously shared with the rest of council? Or because it's not here.
So, what are you?
Well, I heard you talking about how many hours we're saving with mobile units and how many, all of this, but I don't see that in here.
So you may want to, I mean, Councillor Davies pointed out, you may want to check the council meeting, as you know, is on online afterwards. Some of this stuff is comments that were made by members of council, not staff in their presentation. I mean, what specifically are you looking for?
All right, that's fine. You've told me where to go. I'll go there.
Okay. Do you, any feedback on questions 2 or 3, Councillor Gazzola?
Yeah, I just want to make another. I'm hearing an awful lot about wideband fiber. I just want to remind everyone that we did have it here, and we gave it away. Okay, so it was here. Maybe you should have been here 10 years ago when we were. I happen to have been the only member of council that was opposed to selling it, but it was here and it's gone. I'm going to go specifically now to question number 2. Okay, I've been beating around the bush, but one of the emerging priorities that when we met privately, I kept discussing, and that was monthly financial statements. That's something that could really help me, and I think members of council. I've been after this for years. I mean, it looks like we're looking for all kinds of other great things to do. They're great things to do. Internet of Things, beautiful, great. Well, I love that. But simple little thing, monthly financial statements. Where does that stand?
Okay, Councillor Gazzola, as you know, council's visited that issue many times, and we're focusing on the 7 emerging priorities on page 9 and your feedback on those. And are any of those ones that you would like to see staff pursue aggressively?
No.
No? Okay, thank you. Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
I may be not necessarily adding one, but one you may be able to add into the success stories. But I really think one of the things we have to do better, especially when it comes to this, is educate the public on what we currently do and what we can do. I think there is a new generation coming that probably understands it far better than I do, and there's probably members of council who understand it far better than I do. But I think the general public aren't that aware of what we can do and how we do it, and that we can have those savings. And I think that really needs to be a priority of this document on how do we inform and educate the public, because we do all know that it's going to come with probably some price tags in order to do some of this. So I think that piece is really important. And through the engagement, I think that's important, that you get that cross understanding of, the people who don't have as much literacy in technology, and then those who are very advanced. So I would say education, and I guess because we have 7 emerging themes, I'd put that under success stories. It may be a little bit of a stretch. And then I had a question for you with regards to number 3. It makes it, I'm not sure from the bullets if it's one or the other, or can you do both?
It is certainly not one or the other. We were just looking for council's reactions to these statements, and really with the funding that is available, we need to start our planning now in order to leverage that funding. So we're just really looking for council's reaction to those 2 statements and whether they thought that was a positive approach. So it could be both.
Yeah. No, I think my reaction initially is whatever makes the most sense. And if it's a combination of both, or whether it's you go down the road and one seems better than the other, and I think someone mentioned business case is better with one than the other, I think that they're both definitely worthy of further exploration.
Councillor Fernandez, you have more on 2 and 3?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't comment on number 3, but before doing so, you've pulled out actually the expanded public Wi-Fi network as in question 3 as a priority. I'm not sure. I guess I'm puzzled as to why you would pull one out and then leave the other 6 for us to sort of jumble around. Is this one that you see as something that's critically important?
So 2 things. It did appear as the top priority through all the consultation that we've done so far. And secondly, we have the Canada 150 funding that has been approved. So we are bringing forward a budget ask in next year to for the matching funds for that to move ahead. So there are things that will happen, the extent of which will be the scope of what was put forward in the application at this time. But we really want to have direction to know what best way to approach that implementation as to how wide council would see that in the future as well.
Okay, so considering that the Canada One funding is public funding, then I would say that we really should be exploring more private funding to add to that initiative, as opposed to adding more public funding.
Mr. Chapman, you wanted to add something?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I think Councillor Fernandez has hit on the key issue, and it's not an issue to be resolved today, but one that you'll have to grapple with through the strategy. And that is that to this point, we've delivered public Wi-Fi on a shoestring budget. As Mr. Murray indicated, in implementing voice over IP for the phone system, at very low cost, we were able to implement Wi-Fi in our public facilities. I think the issue you're going to have to grapple with when the strategy comes forward is whether or not you want to move much more aggressively and, in fact, invest public funds in the expansion of Wi-Fi and broadband. That's not an issue to be resolved today, but what's clear is from councillors, from the public, through the economic development strategy discussions, this has emerged as a top community priority, and so the key question will be whether or not we're going to put public funds behind supporting it or not. And so, again, we just want direction from you today to continue to explore this, and you'll have a substantial decision to make when the strategy comes back to you.
Okay, thank you. I don't see anybody else in the queue. Just very quickly from my perspective, and I'll start with number 3. I think we need to move forward on both of those bullets. The region-wide branding, I think it's region-wide, quite frankly, but certainly the north half of the region, but like I say, I think it is region-wide, coupled with exploring public-private partnerships is extremely important. I can tell Council a week or so ago when Mayor Tory and I hosted a breakfast with some venture capitalists in Toronto. The one piece of advice we got from several of them was Canada is behind the 8 ball when it comes both to broadband and Wi-Fi. If we want to truly be at the top of our game when it comes to economic development, we need to rise to the occasion on that front. That needs to involve both the private sector, obviously, as well as the role that municipal government plays. Which then, I guess, takes us into question 2 and emerging priorities. And I think the broadband / Wi-Fi piece there for me at least, is the foundation upon which we need to build any of our further efforts, and then the rest will follow. So those are my thoughts on that. So with that, I think, Dan, we turn it back over to you for upcoming milestones and wrapping it up.
Certainly. Thank you. So our upcoming milestones for the project, we hope to have the public engagement and the remaining internal engagement complete by January 2016. We'll come back to Council in February 2016 with a progress update and to seek more direction based on what our findings have been through that process. We hope to have a draft strategy for March and a peer review in May and a final report available in June.
Okay, thank you. Any final questions, comments? Councillor Davey, Councillor Gazzola?
Thank you. I just wanted to compliment staff, Mr. Murray and Mr. Watkins. I know as well worked hard on this. I thought it was a great presentation, and I'm especially thankful you included some concrete examples of some of the inward-facing things and successes we've already seen as a result of the uptake of mobile technology. And I just wanted to comment very briefly on what we're going to be seeing in terms of the outward-facing technology. And I think this is an appropriate priority, the broadband and the Wi-Fi, for the exact reason that Councillor Singh mentioned. It's not so much the cost of the hardware that's a barrier anymore. If you can believe like a device like this cost, $700 10 years ago, and you can pick them up now for, $40, $50. It's the cost of the access that really creates the digital divide. And I can't imagine that the portal that these devices create in terms of, the resources, the questions and answers, the libraries, the books that some people don't have access to. And I think it's our responsibility to make sure that we lessen that.
Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, I just wanted a little more definition of what a peer review is. Who's to conduct the peer review?
So once we have the strategy complete, we really just want to test it with various, maybe some members of Communitech to ensure that the vision, leveraging our partners down there, and also testing it with some other institutions to ensure that we've considered everything we should in the strategy.
So is that going to happen before council makes a decision,
or? We would come back to council in February to review the input we've received and take council's feedback at that time and develop the strategy. The peer review is intended to occur after that and before we bring a final report back to council.
Thank you.
Councillor Fernandez.
I just wanted, you had thrown around those numbers before, and I know that some are happy to hear the numbers, but I think before we go too much further, we need to have a context around those numbers. In other words, this is how many hours we saved, but this is how many hours we actually expend on traveling, for example. And the other number you had thrown out, the 3,825 per year. How many actual staff hours are being used in those areas? I think that context will help us understand, where the scales are. And the other thing I wanted to, and it was from an email I received from a resident. I thought it was really intuitive, and it goes to this too, is when we're doing public engagement, and the comment that they gave me was, the world is run by those who show up. And I think we have to remember that we may get some people who show up, but there'll be lots of them who won't show up. And how will we be able to gather their input?
Mr. Chapman?
If I understand correctly, then you're looking for a sense of scale of the savings, and so when we write the final report and give the update on mobile, we'll seek to address that. And the other point I would just like to make to council, the last time we did the strategy, it was a smaller scope than this one, and it cost us $125,000. I know, Councillor Marsh, you before expressed a desire to see more of this work done in-house. And so as a part of their full-time duties, Mr. Watkins and Mr. Murray have taken this one on, and I believe we'll actually get a better product than we had the last time at much lower cost.
Councillor Ioannidis.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor Vermanovich. I want to echo some of Councillor Davies' comments as well. I think broadband is the oil of our time, and it's definitely something that we need to take advantage of, and it will be the way things are going to be communicated in the future, and as it is today. So, and it's just only going to be stressed upon even further. How much more? Like, there's new technology coming out there, like virtual reality is now starting to become a technology that's going to be used, and that's going to need broadband. So again, like I can't stress how important it is that we get this right and invest in this and get the comments that we need from our community, because this will be the game changer for us.
There's no other comments to be made, so I'll just make mine. I want to thank both yourself, Mr. Murray, and Mr. Watkins for the work that you've done on this. I think, this is a tremendous piece of work that has been done. I know a number of other cities are pursuing or have pursued digital strategies, cities like Vancouver, Montreal, and others. And I think for our city and ultimately our region, this type of work is extremely important if we're going to walk the talk in terms of what we're about to, what we've been doing and what we're about to hear in terms of our economic development strategy. And I think that's sort of the second piece that we've heard, that, you know, in Canada we're not necessarily the greatest at working with our Canadian tech innovators in terms of piloting their technologies, whether it's in the private sector or the public sector, as part of the culture that we breed. And I think that's something that we're going to need to do more of going forward if we want to ensure that Canada stays on the global map in terms of innovation going forward. And I think this is certainly a step in the right direction. So thank you for all of your work on this. So with that, I guess we will take 2 minutes to transition over to the economic development. I presume there's a PowerPoint as well, and the work that Mr. Regier will be doing. So we'll be back in 2 minutes.
Yeah, super. Is that the presentation there? I'm going to just flip through it briefly. Super, thanks. Okay, I've never seen that format for notes.
It's not. I usually copy slides into Word.
Oh, very clever.
Cram more onto a page.
I know. Okay, if I can ask everyone to take their seats and we'll get going. And we will now go into the update on our KEDS strategy. And I'll turn it over to Rod.
Thank you very much. I'll provide some opening comments, and then Jeanette will walk through the strategy as we are going to discuss it today, and then I'll work with her on questions. We do have our management team here to provide some answers to questions as council may provide. This presentation concludes a process of consultation and engagement with our stakeholders that Council directed us to complete last February when we came to you with the proposal. We've made it a practice to develop a new economic development strategy at the outset in the first year of a new term of Council, just so that we have a consensus about the direction that we want to go as a community, and a work plan that we can proceed with as a team and as a group of partners. I will say that the purpose of the strategy, which is at a pretty high level, is designed to set some general direction and to help us to engage with our partners in the project of facilitating the evolution of our economy as a whole. Very clearly, as a city, as a municipal government, we have significant resources, but we have insufficient resources to change the direction of a metropolitan economy. If we're unable to engage our partners in the project, then we can't succeed. All of our work is predicated on the willingness of our community and our stakeholders to engage and support through the investment of their own time and effort and financial and other resources. So this document that we're developing together with our community and with the support of council is designed to help articulate a vision of where we want to go as a community so that our partners and ourselves can work together to achieve that vision. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jeanette to walk through the presentation. Thank you.
Welcome, Jeanette.
So the purpose of our presentation today is to provide you with an update on the results of our stakeholder consultations and to outline our proposed direction for our strategy for your feedback. Our consultations were held under the Ideas of the Brave banner. The intention here was to inspire the community to give us their really brave ideas for the future of the city's economy. This involved council, staff, and citizen-led conversations, as well as our June 2nd symposium at the museum. The consultations that were held offline were very open-ended to give people an opportunity to give us broad input into what they saw was important to the future of the city. The symposium was, however, very focused. It used a cross-disciplinary format so that we had people from all different industries, groups representing their expert view on how to solve very specific economic development problems. The outcome of these consultations were really twofold. We intended to build a lot of excitement and energy around the work that's going on, and in this way we mobilize our partners to help support the implementation of our strategy. But it's also ultimately about what was written down on the post-it notes that were at the symposium and what was captured and recorded in the other conversations. So I'm going to give you some samples now of what we heard through this process. This will give you a sense of the range of comments that we were getting. So the first point here is about innovating with with the help of diversity. What was interesting here is that in the past, people have talked about diversity in the context of insulating ourselves against a downturn of any one particular industry. But people are increasingly understanding that diversity actually helps to fuel growth and that the intersection between people working in different industries can provide new business opportunities. We also heard that we should take concepts that work well in one area and apply them to another. So an example of this would be looking at the Blues Festival and how that model can be used to support other types of fairs or festivals. We heard really specific feedback like take downtown retail spaces and make them smaller to make them viable locations for retailers. And then we heard really high-level cultural type feedback like create a safe place to fail. We also asked people for their perspective on how we can promote the work that's going on in this community. So not just policy, but more of a marketing communications type question. And one of the suggestions was to develop a platform for showing off what people are doing in this city. We heard a lot of feedback that related to simply do more. So we didn't have anyone, for example, say that we shouldn't be operating a Kitchener market. There's so much love in this community for the marketplace. People simply want to see even more. How can we make it better? How can we make it stronger? How can we take, for example, the model that we have on King Street and expand that out? What's worked well in one place, let's apply that model in another. We heard a lot of comments around supporting creative industries, in particular with respect to space. The City of Kitchener has a long history of supporting visual arts, And we're hearing from the creative community that there's a need for music venues, rehearsal space, performance space. There was a balanced approach from a lot of people, so the next point really demonstrates this. More emphasis on local food and food processing. So acknowledging and respecting that local food is valued in this community, but we also have a long history of manufacturing and processing food in this community as well. Both add value to the community. And the last 2 points really sum up the newest ideas that we learned about through our consultations and our research. The first is around micro-manufacturing. So this is, for example, 3D printing. This has potential in the urban environment because it's small, it's micro-manufacturing. But there's other new types of manufacturing, like hardware manufacturing, that can be locating in our suburban industrial spaces as well. So there's a lot of new technologies in manufacturing that are shifting how our manufacturing spaces need to be configured. And the lastly was the subculture, the maker movement is really taking off in this community, and it's a natural fit to look at how it integrates into our strategy. So the maker movement is really the do-it-yourself movement. It's a culture of picking up tools and creating things yourself. So this can be in hardware, this can be robotics, this could be working with chips, but it can also be working with softer materials like felting, polymer clay. It can be creating jewelry. Essentially, what ties together the maker movement is this attitude of solving a problem, using your own skills, your knowledge, and it's very community-oriented. So you see a lot of crossover and knowledge exchange that's taking place. So the vision of the maker community was all talents working together to build projects in the community. So the themes then that came out of this consultation process include continuing to support three of our areas of focus from last time were Startup City, the Innovation District, and Dynamic Downtown. And we heard from the community that they value these areas of focus, and we should continue to work in these areas. It was ION LRT that I think came up more often than anything else at the symposium as a substantial economic development opportunity that we need to be considering in the development of our strategy. We heard that we need to extend support for other clusters like manufacturing and creative industries. It was apparent with areas of focus like Startup City and Innovation District in our last strategy. I think the tech community felt that they were supported by the strategy. It was less evident that other industries were also valued and supported through our work. We heard that we should be building on the maker movement as other communities have. Ottawa, Toronto, San Francisco in the UK, they are supporting and encouraging their maker movement as an important part of their local economy. And lastly, connectivity emerged as an important theme in the context of infrastructure, like fiber, transportation systems, but also in terms of people, neighborhoods, communities, and networks. So we took all of the many Post-it notes and recorded conversations. We had in total about 460 people involved in this process, and the symposium alone generated, I believe, 718 Post-it notes. We have vetted that list and tried to identify those themes, as I mentioned, and what we can realistically accomplish in the next 4 years, and how this all fits in the context of other strategies. So making sure that we align with our corporate strategic plan, the digital strategy, neighborhood strategy, REDS, and our official plan, among others. So the outcome of this is our updated strategy. So the first thing is a proposed name change. So it became apparent through our conversations that KEDS is not meaningful to most people in the community. It's an acronym. It is also a type of shoe, and it's an increasingly popular type of shoe, but it's also something that any community can adopt. You can have a Toronto Economic Development Strategy, a Hamilton Economic Development Strategy, and most notably, Kleinberg now has their own KEDS, the Kleinberg Economic Development Strategy. So we're proposing that we rename our strategy, make it Kitchener. And the reason why we felt this was powerful is because the word make is ultimately a call to action. So we're sending people the message that they can make something happen here and that you can make Kitchener your home and you can be successful in this community. Ultimately, the definition of make is to produce something, to cause or bring something into existence. So it's something that we see has the potential to unify a lot of people in the community because anyone can be making something. You can be making cupcakes, you can be making bread, robots, you can make a financial transaction or an insurance policy, you can make a film, you can make a music career. So we want something that will appeal to and respect the diversity of our local economy and hopefully be distinct and authentic. So the first priority in our strategy is talent. We mentioned talent as an area of focus in our last strategy, and we're giving it a little bit more prominence in this publication, recognizing that ultimately it is the people in this community that drive our economy. In order to be a desirable location for people, we see there's two key pillars for our strategy. We have to offer people career opportunities in this city and a desirable quality of life. Really need both to go together. We could have a vibrant city full of live music and festivals and great restaurants, but if there are no jobs for people, that won't be enough to keep them here. And vice versa. We can have great job opportunities, but we're competing with other cities in Ontario and abroad to keep talent here. So our proposed strategic pillars are grouped around these two key questions. How do we grow our economy and how do we shape our city? So I'll walk you first through the economic growth aspect of this. We have three key areas of focus: make it spark, make it start, and make it grow. This is ultimately about the sort of sequence of a business coming to life. So it's the ideas and the experimentation and the innovation that brings about an idea that could be commercialized. All of the businesses that we have that are homegrown were at one point in time just the spark of an idea. Making it start is all about now you have an idea that you see commercial potential for, and so you're reaching out to our small business center, the Communitech Hub, or other organizations in the community to help you launch your business and get off the ground. And lastly, we want to support existing industry and help retain all of those startups so that they can all stay and grow in this community. So Make It Spark is about that idea and innovation culture. This is creative experimentation. We see that a key opportunity is to support industry crossover, which would permit the injection of new ideas into other industries, and supporting the development of creative industries like music, film, performing arts, and design. So some sample initiatives that could be undertaken in this area include supporting maker culture. An example of that would be the Maker Expo that ran at City Hall in September, and the creation of Makerspace. There are a number of groups out there right now that are investigating the creation of additional makerspace. Right now, our most significant asset is Quartz Lab, which is a membership-based group. You pay a membership fee, like a gym membership, and you get access to all of the tools in their facility: laser cutters, 3D printers, and other types of hard industrial tools. We also see that we can continue to work with the Kitchener Public Library. Not everyone's aware of the presence of the digital lab in that facility that includes a community access 3D printer. And as well, opening up the Artist in Residence program to artists working in any discipline. So in the past, this program has been geared toward visual artists. This year is the first year that we have a performing artist, Janice Lee, as our artist in residence. So we see the opportunity to showcase and support the development of other kinds of artists in the community. Make it start. Our first point here is about being agile in startup services. 4 years ago, when we developed our last strategy, 3D printing was not an economic development priority. So it's difficult to create a strategy today that can anticipate all of the new technologies that might develop in the next 4 years. So ultimately, it's important that we're constantly looking for new opportunities to support emerging sectors. We need to continue to attract entrepreneurs to fuel the startup growth that's going on in this community. And lastly, it's important to be a magnet for investment. If those startups need to leave this community in order to attract investment dollars and get their business up and running, then that's a loss to us. We've had a gap in the past in terms of being able to attract Tier 2 funding. This is shifting right now, and there's certainly room for more improvement. So some sample initiatives from Make It Start. This is where we see an opportunity to investigate the creation of new incubators. The Communitech Hub is producing hundreds of new startups every year and has had a substantial impact on our urban economy. There's the potential to create other kinds of incubators or accelerators that would support, in particular, hardware manufacturing, digital media content, and life sciences. The Startup Landing Pad program is available right now in the downtown core to support the conversion of upper story space into landing pads for startups that are graduating out of the hub. We see that this is a program that could be applied in other ways. So our hardware startups who simply can't be accommodated in an urban environment can be accommodated in some of our suburban industrial spaces. And those industrial spaces tend to be large, and there's no incentive for the property owner to subdivide them. So using the Startup Landing Pad program would potentially help in the subdivision of those spaces and allow them to be retrofitted and updated to accommodate modern manufacturing processes. We also see an opportunity here to explore pop-up retail options. There are a number of challenges that the retail industry is facing. Any opportunity that retailers can get to test their product mix they're offering without having to commit to a lease that they're going to face difficulties in filling is an opportunity to support new retail. We see it beneficial to establish a hub for music and film. It came out consistently through our consultations that the performing arts do not have access to the space that they need to develop as a local cluster. Mobilizing mentors and ambassadors is particularly important to help entrepreneurs to enter into our local ecosystem. We have really rich local networks of people, but this is an opportunity to introduce new Canadians into those networks and help them to be more successful in launching their businesses here. And lastly, we can support investment attraction through partner initiatives like Passport to Success, which runs during Oktoberfest. We invite people in. It's currently operated by CTT, and basically show off the best assets we have in this community to help attract people, investment into this community. Make It Grow, then, is the last area of focus in terms of how we grow industry. So the new idea here is positioning ourselves as a global maker hub. This is an idea that came directly out of our symposium. We already have a number of assets in place in terms of our manufacturing strength and our tech strength. So with a little bit more work, we can really help to position ourselves on the global stage as a community where things are made. We can work with our existing assets like the Manufacturing Innovation Network, MIN, to support the development and competitiveness of our manufacturing community. And this is where we see the importance of developing all of the system supports that are necessary, such as marketing, finance, supply chain development. We already have significant strength in these areas in manufacturing, and we need to continue to support those in order to ensure that we have a complete system. Some sample initiatives in this area include capturing and retaining our graduating startups, exploring new opportunities to support manufacturing through MIN. There are other communities that have taken the MIN model and put their own twist on it, like, for example, helping to connect manufacturers or startups with existing production space so that they don't have to go abroad in order to make their product. We can cause collisions between mature businesses and other types of artists, content creators, and technical experts. And lastly, we heard through our consultation that cost competitiveness is still very important. Kitchener has generally competed on being a high-value location. This is a community where you have access to the resources, the supports, the networks to really launch and grow your business. But when we're competing against other communities like Toronto, Silicon Valley, we certainly can compete on cost, and continuing to be an affordable place to expand your business and grow your business is important. So that concludes the first 3 areas of focus. So we'll move on now to answering the question, how do we shape our city? Our 3 areas of focus here are make it urban, make it vibrant, and make it connect. Make it urban is ultimately about the infrastructure and the spaces in our central neighborhoods and our downtown especially. Make it vibrant is about what happens in those spaces. It's how they come to life. And Make It Connect is intended to recognize that we simply don't operate in isolation in our economic development work, and we need to be thinking in a regional context and thinking about how we connect through to Toronto to help make the most of the assets that we have. Make it urban, our first priority is continuing on the path of building a dynamic downtown. The next point relates to the redevelopment of our own assets, city-owned land in the downtown area, and working with the private sector to support the design standards that are most beneficial to our community and our economy. So seeing well-designed spaces that are pedestrian-friendly and multiple use. And lastly, looking at some of the softer infrastructure and the sought-after urban amenities like dog parks and patios. Some sample initiatives here, including advancing the redevelopment of city-owned lands in the civic and innovation districts. We see it as important to work with planning staff in the development of station area plans around the ION LRT. Broadening the landing pad and facade programs to support the subdivision of downtown retail space. So as I mentioned earlier, these retail spaces in the downtown core tend to be oversized relative to the needs of independent retailers. They tend to be very long, and they're essentially too big. So the landing pad program could be extended to permit the subdivision that would convert the back end of the retail unit into a small office space. This would make it a more viable opportunity for an independent retailer. And it would also have the potential to support some of the startups that are graduating out of the hub that can't afford the premium space in some of our Class A offices in the downtown and have a need for a very small office but value remaining in the downtown community. And lastly, planning for amenities like the dog parks, bistro chairs, pop-up parks that would support vibrancy. To make it vibrant, our first point is to continue to build Kitchener's identity as a festival city. We have strength already in this area, and we see that we can take this further. The next point is a little less self-evident, but this is about encouraging the creative community to really help bring the city to life in unexpected ways and unexpected spaces. So an obvious example of vibrancy in an unexpected space would be yoga in the park. Another unconventional space might be the programming that went into Ontario Street or Tame the Lanes. So this is where we see an opportunity to really create a lot of excitement and energy in the streets and in our vacant spaces. And lastly, continue building community and neighborhood. Some sample initiatives under Make It Vibrant. The first 2 points really relate to our event programming, and this is where we see a need for balance. So we can work with key event organizers to really build up those big banner events that raise the profile of the city and attract people, tourists, to visit the city to attend these big festivals and events. We also see a need to facilitate some of the smaller niche events to potentially come together where appropriate to create something that's bigger than they could potentially achieve on their own. So an example would be the Summer Lights Festival partnering with Our World Music to deliver those programs on the same evening. Geek Week ran recently in September. Those were a lot of independent events that banded together under the promotional banner of Geek Week to attract more attention for the work that was going on. So there's a lot of great programming in the community that with a little bit of extra work can help to raise the profile of some of these distinct communities and help them have more successful outcomes for their events work. We see this is where we need to be working closely with the neighborhood strategy to ensure that we have alignment in terms of delivering neighborhood-based placemaking. So we are working with neighborhood strategy staff to ensure that the alignment here is appropriate. Activating passive spaces, this is where, again, we see Tame the Lane. This is the pop-up art installation that went into the Duke Street parking garage Helix. This would be festivals like Night Shift or Summer Lights that bring life into the streets of our downtown. We see a need to support live music in venues, and this has been emphasized to us consistently through the consultations. There's a real need to support venues of all sizes in order to facilitate artist development. And lastly, this is where we see the Kitchener Market playing an important role as a community space. The market was articulated to us as being more than just a place to go to buy food. It was a place where people could feel a sense of connection to the community and a sense of belongingness. And we see that there's the potential to extend the brand and take advantage of the strength of that and move it outside the building. Make It Connect then is driven by the idea of the innovation corridor from Waterloo Region into Toronto. So we see that we need to think about connectivity in terms of infrastructure. This is GO Trains, this is Ion LRT, this is fiber. And then this is also about partnerships. This is where there's a relationship between the work that we do and the new Regional Economic Development Corporation, Communitech, and helping to build stronger connections with Toronto clusters. This is particularly relevant in three key industries: tech, insurance, and film, where there's a need for a greater connection between the work going on here and Toronto. So we see a lot of companies that have offices in both locations, especially in insurance and tech. And so building stronger connections between those cities is important. And lastly, all of this activity is really converging in the innovation district. This is the heart of our innovation ecosystem, but it's also where our infrastructure, ION and the GO Train, are all connecting in. So we can think more about how that is a significant asset for us. So some sample initiatives here include continuing the advocacy work for two-way all-day GO Trains and high-speed rail as well. This is outlined in the business case for two-way all-day GO. The need to support the digital strategy, as outlined in the previous presentation. We've heard from our business community the importance of fiber and public Wi-Fi in supporting our innovation ecosystem. And working with our regional partners, Red Sea, tourism, but also with the municipalities of Cambridge and Waterloo to ensure that we're aligning the work that we're doing and making the most of the assets that we have in all of these cities. And lastly, formalizing the physical identity of the Innovation District. Startup City took off and gained a little bit more traction than Innovation District, but we've seen that the community is adopting the Innovation District name. There's a tremendous amount of activity coming out of the district, but we can do more to formalize that identity and promote the work that's going on there. And this would be relevant in the context, in particular, of trying to attract more investment into the startup businesses that are in that facility. If our innovation district is globally recognized, then we will be better able to attract investment into those startups. I'm going to turn it over to Rod for a moment.
Thank you. Here we wanted to make the point that, again, our entire project is predicated on the support of our partners. We see the economic development investment, the economic development reserve as being the primary source of funds for implementing the strategy. Major projects, of course, will be brought forward for council consideration and on the strength of business cases. But our objective is to really leverage additional resources from other sources, particularly from our private sector partners, with the target of never spending more than 50% or investing more than 50% in any given project. And in one of those cases, the 50% target is really a top end for us because it is the bar for the facade. and landing pad programs. That is, we can spend up to or invest up to 50% of a project cost up to a certain amount in those cases. So in a nutshell, the economic development strategy, although the specific projects need to be outlined, we see falling within the general scope of the Economic Development Reserve, and we would not be looking for additional project funding out of the 2016 operating budget. I think looking out further, I think that it's another matter, but beyond 2017, we'll need to engage in some conversations with Council.
So just to demonstrate the alignment between our old strategy and the proposed new structure, we did hear from our advisory committees when we engaged them initially that there was no need to change direction, that we needed to continue working in the same way. So we have tried to reorganize our strategy into a way that's hopefully understandable and better reflects the diversity of our community. So one of the areas of focus last time was talent, and we have retained that and just given it more prominence. 3 areas of focus: cross-cluster building, startup city, and our commitment to manufacturing evolved into make it spark, make it start, make it grow. Cross-cluster building, we found, it wasn't evident what that really meant. It wasn't meaningful to the community. And dynamic downtown has evolved into make it urban and make it vibrant to reflect the sort of 2 key thrusts of the work that's going on in that area. And the innovation district actually could fall into many different parts of our strategy. It certainly contributes to a dynamic downtown. It contributes to startup city. But we've positioned it as belonging under Make It, or aligning most closely with Make It Connect, which is the heart of how all of these systems connect together. So our REDS alignment, the Waterloo Region Economic Development Strategy, is specifically outlines key action items in which municipalities are expected to lead. So what we've done is gone through those action items and identified the ones that relate to Make It Kitchener. So the first item is to promote innovation that occurs in Waterloo Region as a core value of the region. We see this supported through Make It Spark, Make It Start, and the Kitchener Digital Strategy. The next point relates primarily to space, ensuring that there's an appropriate supply of industrial and office space that meets the expected demand profile. We see this being supported through the different landing pad programs and incentive programs that we're proposing to implement. The next point relates to the provision of accelerator resources. This is the wording in REDS, and it's a little bit misleading because it makes it sound as though we should provide the accelerator resources, when in fact what we would do is support the development of accelerator programs in the community. Promoting partnerships and collaboration, it has been a core value of economic development and will continue to be. Promoting a sustainable rural and in particular urban fabric, we see as supported under Make It Urban. And the REDS document singles out creative industries in particular as requiring support, so arts, culture, and creative endeavor in the region. And the arts actually cross many different areas in our strategy. So when we talk about growing industry, we're talking about all kinds of industries. So that includes creative industries like music and film. And then we recognize that those creative industries also play an important role in vibrancy. So it fits under Make It Vibrant as well. And lastly, to enhance Waterloo Region's unique sense of place. And placemaking is an important part in particular of the downtown strategy. And we also see that it will be supported through the neighborhood strategy. And bringing forward and building out our identity as, for example, Startup City or Festival City will also enhance the identity of our places. So that concludes the outline of our strategic direction. As Rod mentioned, we've provided you with some sample initiatives to give you a feel for what we've heard from the community is valued and needed, and we are continuing to work on developing that implementation plan. The intention is to give you a sense of the direction that we're going and get your feedback on whether or not it's appropriate and logical and makes sense. And we would be returning with a more complete project plan or business cases as appropriate in the future.
Well, thank you very much for a very detailed presentation on obviously a huge amount of work that's gone into what will be a hugely important strategy for us going forward. We have a number of members of council with questions, so we'll turn it over to them. Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
Yes, thank you very much. There's a lot of very, very good information in here and a lot of exciting opportunity that I see moving forward for the strategy. So I commend you on the work that you've done to date. This probably won't be a surprise to you in our discussions. I'm still wondering where throughout this strategy economic development and the strategy will help to support the suburban commercial and retail growth. What through this do we see economic development staff helping in that area?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Verbanovich, we see this strategy aligned really well with the neighborhood strategy, and the suburban commercial centers are really core service centers for neighborhoods in particular. The large regional retail hubs, of course, are flourishing and are not in need of any support in particular. But the future, the success of suburban smaller retail plazas, particularly hinges on intensification and vitality of those local neighborhoods, and it's important for the strategy for implementation of our neighborhood, particularly our community nodes. As articulated in the official plan and so on, to proceed, move forward. We haven't considered any specific incentive programs for neighborhood plazas, particularly because the success of retail as a whole is being challenged, particularly by online shopping. We've seen the failure of international retailers like Target and Metz and many others, of course, and it's a challenging environment for just about every retailer out there right now. But it's something that if council was interested in seeing us move forward with, we could do some thinking about specifically.
I think that's definitely one area, because I'm not totally familiar with everything going on in the neighborhood strategy, but if I kind of read it through your document, that's more about bringing vibrancy to communities versus the economic development drive that I kind of want to see there to be more of a focus in this strategy in the suburban areas. There's a whole lot that you're doing in the downtown, and I appreciate that, and I want that work to continue. But I really think that that's a piece that needs to be addressed so that people know that they can come to the city and get assistance and help there. This may turn into a little bit more of a comment, but I probably will be done. I'm hearing more and more from the community that under our official plan in our mixed-use zones, that they have the opportunity to go full residential, which is a problem to me, because then we end up with a lot of residential space and not a whole lot of commercial retail space, and that's one of the concerns that I hear quite frequently. And the reason that this is happening is because the restrictions that we have on developers to build commercial and retail space is so much more significant than those that are required for residential space. And so my bigger concern from an economic development perspective out in the suburbs where I represent is that we're going to end up with a whole lot of people and not a whole lot to either walk to or to do, or jobs that they can just go to, right? And so I think it's a combination of obviously planning, but also with economic development trying to assist, because we really do need that to make our complete communities. So I would like to see somewhere in here a little bit stronger focus on what we can do from a city perspective to help drive economic development from that commercial retail perspective moving forward. I do think, there is more focus in some of the other areas, like Make It Vibrant through the neighborhood strategy, and obviously festivals downtown, no matter where they are, people from all areas of the community can appreciate them. So just from that perspective, I still feel like that piece is not captured in what we see here, and I hope it's captured in the final document.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Vrbanovich, I think what I'll take away from that is direction to have a further conversation with Michael and our planning staff about ways that we can reinforce the concept of support for complete communities in the neighborhood strategy in our planning framework. We haven't done a good enough job here of articulating that, but we saw it initially as a little bit out of scope because it's not as core to building the economic base of a community as might otherwise. Certainly, absolutely critical to the future livability of our community.
Yeah, again, it comes back to, and I see that we need to grow and work on our downtown, but there's definitely opportunities elsewhere, and I think that needs to be part of, I think that needs to be added as part of our core service within economic development.
Councillor Fernandez?
Thank you. Some of my questions I'm going to probably go over time, so I want to make sure I get them out as quickly as I can. So the first one is, you had mentioned Communitech and Passport to Success. That's one of the components that Communitech does with all the startups and stuff that they do. Do we financially support Communitech in any way, shape, or form?
Yes, through you, Chair Vrbanovich. We're members of Communitech, and we also provide a direct operating grant to them. It's a very small percentage of their overall operating budget, but it's significant from a city point of view.
Okay. So I saw the slide where you showed the different, I think it's about 2 slides back, where there was some overlap and some dovetailing. No, you're going too far. One back there. Overlap with the dovetailing with the Waterloo Regional Economic Development strategy. So I guess does that mean we are refocusing our economic development from what the original intent was to focus it more on all of the strategies that make it connecting and sorry, I can't remember all of them.
Yes, so this slide was here really to demonstrate that our strategy is completely aligned with the regional economic development strategy. That essentially that strategy has articulated how what the role of various levels, jurisdictions, and organizations in the overall ecosystem regional economy are, and it's simply to make the point that it's identified the role of municipalities, local municipalities, lower tier municipalities, as falling into these categories, and our strategy, we believe, is really well aligned with these particular categories of activity.
Okay, but when I'm looking at 2.2.2, it talks about continued supply of greenfield land, brownfield projects, and available industrial and office space. But isn't that what the Waterloo Regional Economic Development Department is in charge of as well? Shovel-ready industrial space, so that we can attract these industries to our community at large?
The Regional Economic Development Corporation is actually not responsible for greenfield land development. There may be another organization at some point, and each of the municipalities has that within their legislated framework. We do have some residual greenfield employment lands in the economic development or in the City of Kitchener portfolio, and we'll continue to facilitate their redevelopment over the next little while. But that supply is very limited, and so it's not going to be a major part of our work in the long term.
Okay, thanks for that. So as Councillor Galloway was, Galloway-Seelock was suggesting that there was a lot of focus on sort of our downtown, our vibrancy, which is very important to draw our community sort of, out of their cocooning and into some great activities that help make our community so vital and vibrant. But on the flip side, and I did hear you talk about some of our suburban opportunities, and I think you were talking about, Janet was talking about retail space with, they're long and they're large, and that we could have some space in there for startups. Can you help me understand, or maybe this is too detailed of a question this time, help me understand how would we get that message out there, and how is that our responsibility? Isn't it the responsibility of that particular business owner to see an opportunity for themselves to rent out maybe some extra space?
Yes, it's clearly shared responsibility. In this particular case, what we're proposing is we would propose to just simply broaden the criteria for the startup landing pad to include the rear portion of retail spaces in the downtown, because from a practical point of view, downtown retail spaces are really dysfunctionally to be practical. So that program, what we're proposing there is just to broaden the category, broaden the objectives of the startup landing pad program.
Sorry, I thought.
Councillor Fernandez, your time's
I know, but I just wanted. Maybe I'm misunderstanding, because I thought I heard you say suburban and industrial park, and now I'm not hearing the same. So maybe, I have more questions I'll ask afterwards, but I guess I'm puzzled. Maybe I didn't understand right.
Through the chair, we actually see that there's a couple opportunities to expand the startup landing pad program. So one of the opportunities is to go into suburban industrial spaces and support the subdivision and an update of those aging industrial buildings. And then, as Rod just described, using that startup landing pad program to support the subdivision of downtown retail space. So we see that it's a program that could be used in many different ways to support different types of industry and in different locations in the community. So I apologize for any confusion about how that program's applied.
Okay. Councillor Marsh.
First of all, I want to thank you for your presentation. It's very clear and exciting and fresh. I like the Make It brand. Economic development, is something that I think is extremely important for our city, and I want to just agree with Councillor Galloway-Seelock's comments that we need to make sure that as we're focusing on economic development, we do have to ensure that we have complete neighborhoods in the suburban areas and in the downtown areas, and I fully agree that we do need to make sure we're focusing on the whole city. And so at first I was concerned when you first outreached with your draft ideas that dynamic downtown was axed, but I'm glad to see that there is some mention of it, even though it's a more global focus and it could be applied anywhere in the city. As the strategy develops, the Make It Grow examples, I think you could look to other sectors other than the makers. I mean, the Make It brand, as I said, is strong, but I think there's a real strong focus on the do-it-yourselfer emphasis, and I think that if we can bring in some more examples of how you might help other sectors to make it grow, that might alleviate some of the concerns that have been raised by other councillors.
Thank you.
Councillor Singh.
Thank you, and thank you both for bringing this forward. And I think I'm excited to see what you have before us. And my question to you is it to the same, I guess, support and efforts of our previous strategies? Are we doing enough going forward? Or are we pausing a bit of the successes that we've been able to attain from a previous KED strategy, and prior to that, the efforts of EDIF, that we've been able to generate and create tremendous momentum that's creating the prosperity in our downtown now? Are we slowing that pace through our efforts and seeing how that all evolves? Or what we have before us will continue to nurture, support, if not even accelerate those efforts?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councillor Singh. I think that what we're looking to do is accelerate here, and I'll tell you why. We're seeing a tremendous explosion in hardware startups coming out of our post-secondary education institutions. About 40% of the hardware, about 40% of the startups in the Velocity program right now are actually making a physical object. And those companies will not likely find a suitable home in the long term in our downtown. And this is why we've designed the Startup Landing Pad program for hardware, and are looking to support hardware and manufacturing incubator accelerator programs. Because these companies, we have a couple of fantastic examples of Thalmic Labs, Myovision, and ClearPath Robotics. Together, we've got between 300 and 400 jobs in these companies right now, and they're growing exponentially. And these are the young technology manufacturing companies that have the potential to add long-term durability to our manufacturing sector and to provide employment in our suburban communities, exciting, high-valued employment. We're seeing a lot of startup activity in, believe it or not, life sciences. So 10 years after we made strategic investments in our life sciences campus downtown with the University of Waterloo, we have Velocity with 16 life sciences startups embedded in their program.
So what are we doing? What are our efforts that you can link to, you're speaking about, our successes that attributed to our past actions? So going forward, what can you point out and say, this will spur additional growth in these things? This will help to create a better, prosperous, wider, diverse economy in our downtown.
In 2007, we made a strategic investment in the Communitech Hub of $500,000. It's resulted in an entirely new economy in the center of the city. We'd like to be able to, we'll bring forward concepts to council to make similar investments in accelerators and landing pad programs that will result in the same level of growth in the hardware space and the life sciences space.
Good. I'm glad you touched on that. My next question was I see where you're going. We have to be conscientious of what we can afford to do, even though as important of a topic this is for our future and growth and prosperity. But the whole aspect of 50% contribution, that we want to limit ourselves. I'm supportive at the same time. I'm cautious on that because it can't be as black and white. I hope it's not black and white.
We see that as a kind of a rule of thumb, partially because the resources that we have available to us under the current framework are relatively limited. But if we saw an outstanding opportunity to make a strategic investment that would be catalytic for a new sector in our economy, we'd bring it forward for council consideration.
So can I give you my feedback that rather than being even a rule of thumb, that we talk about more of a partnership as opposed to saying that it has to be a hard limit of 50%, but that the encouragement and focus will be given in a broader partnership with our key partners in the community, as opposed to the municipality doing things on its own and hoping that it will generate good results. And as for incubators and accelerator centers, and I see that, I think that's where the phenomenal growth still exists, and that's where we can pretty much spur and assist on the ground level and to just sit back and watch the benefits come out of that. What more could we do beyond the landing pad? I think out of our Economic Development Advisory Committee, one of our members, I'll point it out, it was Councillor Ioannidis actually, he had talked about perhaps encouraging more houses around the downtown core area that could be accelerator centers and incubator spots. What could we do to assist that?
The key, Jeanette did reference that one of the key limiting factors for our startup community is access to capital. And so we see supporting our partners, Communitech, Velocity, and others, and our future economic development, Regional Economic Development Corporation, as it builds its capacity to help attract venture capital to the city.
But it comes down to planning, I think. So I hope to see our Economic Development Department working with the Planning Department, ensuring on our future plan use planning that we incorporate allowable usages that rather than deter or limit, but in case would encourage it. As well as I'm hoping, and this could be snowballing here, and today's not the day, we're talking about general strategies here, but small incentives and new incubator centers that maybe want to be able to open up through tax rebates or whatever the case may be. But those are in the line of small assistance so we can encourage existing landowners to utilize these properties and be able to make additional space available, in which case, because of if there's lesser demand, these spots and spaces would be cheaper, and being able to help these startups as well.
Okay, Councillor Singh, you're out of time. You'll have to buzz in again. Councillor Etherington?
Through you, Mr. Chair, 2 quick questions, I hope. The first one, Rod and Jeanette, excellent report. My first question, in the session, the Ideas of the Brave session that I had on my back deck, people were very aware of building design. What can we do to maintain a high standard of building design in the downtown? Because quite frankly, I don't see much imagination used in some buildings.
Well, as the city moves forward with the reurbanization of its own properties, it's certainly possible for the city to express high standard of design expectation in any kind of future redevelopment proposal that we may accept. Beyond that, we've got planning controls within which we need to limit where we can express our public interest. And I think that's a question that we'd logically bat over to our planning colleagues.
Yeah, okay. And my second question, you guys are always so very positive, which is great. And my wife tells me I'm incredibly negative, which is not great. But anyway, my second question, the report goes out of its way to emphasize vitality, vibrancy created in part by festivals as we continue, and I'm quoting you, on the path of creating a dynamic downtown, and jumping ahead, complete perhaps with pop-up parks. If that's the case, and this is a discussion, your report, if that's the case, and I see many, many examples of that, and I love being downtown, I love what's happening downtown, but what can we do to change a situation where we have the equivalent of an abandoned bomb site right next to City Hall on the Mayfair site, several months after demolition, and that was accompanied by a promise to replace it with one of your pop-up parks, I guess. And it's in time for 2 international festivals, hockey and Oktoberfest. I guess I'm asking, and maybe that's a little unfair, but what can we do about that?
Mr. May?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have a number of controls and legislative tools at our disposal. I can assure you that we've used those on the Mayfair property. We do not have the ability to force timelines, but we are in constant contact with the property owner. My understanding is that later this week they will be finishing the weatherproofing of the wall. The sod will be installed in the spring, and staff are actively looking at how we can screen the property and install planters in time for Oktoberfest.
Thank you.
Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you. Thank you. Through you, Mayor Urbanovic. I just want to, the one question that I have is, when we're looking at a brand for the City of Kitchener, so is it Make It Kitchener going to be our brand?
We see Make It Kitchener as the title of our document, of our economic development strategy, and also as a powerful idea for our future identity.
Okay. To me, it sounds like a really good brand as it is, because I think we can make it all happen here. So I like it quite a bit. I don't really have much more to say as far as the question. I just think you guys did a tremendous job on this, and in particular with the public consultation as well. And it just shows the commitment you guys have to your staff and yourselves to providing our community with the best opportunities to grow economically and as well facilitate vibrancy in our community and our neighborhood. So just want to say great job. Thank you.
Okay, I have 3 sets of people now that need to go a second time. Just want to be cognizant of our time as well. Councillor Fernandez.
Thanks. I had a bunch more questions, but I'm going to let those slide because there are 2 things that I heard in the last series of questions that raise a little bit of concern for me. One was Councillor Singh's suggestion about more than 50% funding, which I think was part of a statement or a part of one of the slides. And there it is, thank you. But also, when you were talking about the Economic Development Reserve, so first I want to understand what's left in that Economic Development Fund?
The Economic Development Reserve has got the residual values of the EDIF fund and the contributions from land sales in the downtown.
So how much is in there?
The 2015 budget was projected originally at $3.4 million. It's now at 8.3 because of the transfer of commitments for downtown parking in the Civic Center.
So we're sitting in with a reserve fund of $8.3 million? Our area, but how can we attract them when we've been hearing from Mr. Tiagi that we've got some very serious concerns about water mains. We don't want to bring businesses here if we don't have the infrastructure to support that. And so how are we going to offset that? We've got $8 million sitting that maybe could help some of that situation. How do we address that?
Well, I guess my understanding is that Council is working through a strategy for its infrastructure requirements, and the Economic Development Reserve has been identified as a source of investment capital for projects that end up supporting the demand side of the economy.
Sorry, what side?
The demand side. That is to create the demand to utilize city lands, to invest in city lands and services.
Okay. I guess I'm going to make a comment here that yes, it may be about the demand side, but if we increase the usage of our buildings and we bring more business here, but we haven't fixed our water mains, and these new businesses come here, and then they are stuck in a situation where a water main pipe bursts in a building that one of our existing buildings that we have here downtown, and I understand that, we want to repurpose those buildings. I think that's wonderful. That's really positive for us to do that. They're not going to be too happy with us if we're not fixing those. Are we also suggesting that we do some more, and maybe I didn't hear it correctly, some incentive programs out of this funding, out of this reserve?
The only new incentive program that we have suggested here is for manufacturing landing pads. That is to support the attraction of new manufacturing investment, startup investment in particular. That is the new companies that are building, have got, like ClearPath Robotics, for example, or MyoVision, that have the potential to create new manufacturing jobs.
Okay, so let's just talk about the robotics one. Sorry, just
ClearPath?
Not ClearPath. Oh. Yes, ClearPath. So they've relocated into an industrial park, which brings jobs to a suburban area. Are you saying that we would have some funding to support them if they wanted to relocate to another industrial building? Or, I mean,
no. What I would say is that we have a concept to expand the startup landing pad program, and we'll bring forward a more detailed proposal to council for consideration. The essence of the idea is this: that a hardware company like a ClearPath Robotics may start at the center of the city, like they actually occupied space in the tannery, but they were manufacturing something, and it wasn't appropriate. The tannery did not meet their needs, and so they logically relocated to a suburban industrial building. Shortly after they got some, actually fairly early in their development process. That's exactly the kind of company that will create future manufacturing jobs in the city. And so we want to be able to help their transition. And the building owner has not got a strong incentive to subdivide because it's an expensive prospect and they'd rather lease the entire building out or sell the entire building. So it's a bit of a mismatch between a hardware startup, a manufacturing startup, and a building owner. We think that we can help bridge that by providing an incentive and helping to cover some of the costs of refurbishing and subdividing industrial space for hardware manufacturing startups, and that will lead to the creation of new manufacturing jobs, particularly in the suburban parts of our city.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a couple of people who have clicked in for the first time since, so I'll go to them first. Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Mayor Urbanovich. My first question: does anyone remember where economic development placed on the citizen survey that was conducted by Environics via Compass Kitchener?
It was the second most important priority.
Okay, very good. And at this point, is economic development making any additional requests via the 2016 budget process?
No.
No, thank you. Those are all my questions. I'll just provide brief feedback as well if I could. I've obviously been part of this process through economic development, and I'm very, very supportive. I will reiterate my only thoughts here that I think are most important. There's a whole lot of information in this document. It speaks to manufacturing and music and food processing, festivals, and all sorts of things that I think are very, very important. But I think when you're working out the strategy, I think it's very important also to realize that there's been a lot of effort, both by the public sector and the private sector, to sort of brand our region to where we are now. And the first slide of this, one of the comments was not just tech. And I guess I kind of fear that creep going forward, because my sense is once we're getting a bit tired of that technology innovation stuff internally, then that means maybe people elsewhere in the world are actually grasping onto that. So I would really like us to keep that continued focus outward facing when it comes to technology and the innovation, because I think a lot of industries sprout from that, the food industry, for example. Whereas a lot of these other items, I think, should be more supportive, like an inward facing type projects. Having said that, I think the Make It moniker is great. I think it fits in. There's a lot of congruities there with startups. And I'll be very supportive of this.
Thank you, Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Mayor Vrbanovic. Love this report and all the hard work that went into it. Seeing the research, and I don't know how you made it through all those Post-it notes and got it all down, but fantastic. Just as I go through this, I just wonder if it might be beneficial for us to have mentions of areas outside the downtown as well. I know with down the road we'll have a new Highway 7, and with that will come some new opportunities maybe for office buildings and business parks, and also maybe just a nod to our tourism and convention sections as well, just maybe including that wording in the report as well. So just there is focus on downtown, as there should be, but just to also include that. Yep. Thanks.
Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be very brief. As a point of personal privilege, Councillor Fernandez had commented on something I had said earlier about the 50% funding. Just want as clarity, I'm not saying that we should absolutely proactively go out there and spend 100% ourselves. This is more of a strategy document. This is something that publicly will be looked upon by investors and those that are looking to come into this area and broaden their investment that already is existing. So we want to make sure that our language is more broad and that we don't want to just kind of silo ourselves into limiting and appear that we're not willing to be forthcoming in ensuring, to foster in partnerships through investment. The other thing is about broadening and looking outwards are the two words I heard from Councillor Schneider and Councillor Davey. And I think that speaks to our downtown as well. I think we have to look outward beyond the Innovation District. It is not just the Innovation District that should have the attention that is required. I think we have to look at a broader net around our downtown. And of course, earlier comments about the suburbs. I think it comes through land use planning, as well as, of course, when we look at available spaces, encouraging through initiatives of, as I said earlier, incubator centers and accelerator centers. They could easily be outside the downtown. Absolutely. If there's cheaper available space that perhaps we're assisting or facilitating as well. So, and that's through avenues that we could help to spur.
Okay, nobody else at this point. I too will add my comments to the work that you've done. I think staff, as I said earlier, has done an incredible amount of work to get this process to where it is. The public session that we had at the museum, in terms of Ideas of the Brave, I think was outstanding. And as Councillor Schneider said, it's great to see how all those little sticky notes have been condensed into the document that's before us. I believe that the work that we as a council do, and ultimately this strategy in terms of focus on economic development, is one of the most important things that we do as an organization, because it helps set the tone and the direction for the private sector partners and others to make investments in our community and to build on the kinds of successes we've seen in the past. Failure to do that will simply mean that other communities will leap ahead of us, and we will start looking at them from the back end. And quite frankly, it's not a place where I'm prepared to be as a community going forward. I know when it comes to dollars are always an important thing, but it's also important that when we reflect on the price of something, we also reflect on the value of something. And I believe investments made in the kinds of economic development initiatives that Mr. Regier has talked about are absolutely essential to going forward. In fact, I was just visiting with one of our partners last week, and they were saying to me, I get tours through here sometimes 2, sometimes 3 times a week from people all over the world. And one of the questions they ask in terms of what's happened in downtown Kitchener, around the tech sector, around the startup community, and so on, is like, has this always been the case in your community? Like, is this decades in the making? And in fact, their answer is no. And it all started, and this is the words of this individual when they're explaining it to others, it all started with the investment that the city made in bringing the university down here and the School of Pharmacy and everything else that followed from both the private sector and some additional investments from the public sector, like the one that Rod mentioned in terms of Communitech and so on. So I think it's important for us to remember that. I think it's important for us to remember that the Economic Development Fund that Rod mentioned is not an endless fund. In fact, when it comes to that fund, it's a fund that doesn't have ongoing funding, and hence why Rod has indicated that a future council is going to need to deal with this in terms of the post-2019 era going forward. And unlike utilities, that does have a constant stream of funding coming into it for infrastructure investment, does have new funds coming in. And so I think we need to keep that in perspective. Finally, I think the last point is this notion of balance throughout the community. And I concur with the comments made by Councillor Galloway-Seelock, Councillor Schneider, a number of members of council around the Horseshoe, that we do need to make sure that this plan speaks to some of those components, and I think some of that is there. I think it just needs to be a little clearer in terms of some of its language and message around that. There is no question that modern day urban centers that are being successful are seeing, particularly in terms of tech and innovation, are seeing that hub being built around their inner cores. That's a reality that's driven by the sector, and we need to continue to respond to that. Having said that, there are other parts of the city that are also equally important, and we need to make sure we give them a fair shake and continue to encourage and see their development be successful going forward as well. And so that will be a balancing act. But, there's a reason why, for example, we've seen our neighbors to the north of us open up some of their downtown buildings, such as the old CG building and the old brick building, and seeing tech and innovation moving into some of those brick and beam buildings, because those companies want to be in those inner cores, sometimes more so than out in the suburban tech parks. And so that's the balance that we need to support. But I think Rod's talked about a number of initiatives that we can do, particularly in terms of the makerspace that can see that grow throughout other sectors of the community going forward. So with that, hopefully you've got some good input from folks here. I think the last point that I'll make is, as you think about a communication strategy around this, I think it's also important to think about the language as it's understood by the common person in the city of Kitchener. Well, all of us in this room understand startups and incubators and accelerators and hubs and pop-ups and global maker hubs and all that kind of stuff. The average citizen doesn't necessarily get that. So how do we put that either through pictures or language or whatever into lingo that that people can understand beyond sort of the core ECDEV type of reader? So I would ask you to consider that going forward. So with that, I think, can I get a motion to Sarah, Councillor Marsh?
Sorry. Just a quick comment, just to in appreciation of the staff in management and economic development who have bared with us throughout this whole meeting and been available for questions. Nobody did end up asking those questions, but thank you for being here. And also thank you for, on Mayor Verbanovic's note of making the wording more resident-friendly. Uber cluster or super cluster got left. I'm so happy to hear that, so thank you.
Okay. We'll now move the in-camera meeting authorization. There is. I emailed council about an item, a personal item that potentially needs to be added on the agenda. Council has asked that a member of council has asked that it does get added. So I'll need, I guess, first a motion to, what's the motion I need first? I guess to add an emergency item to the in-camera agenda. Moved by Councillor Singh, seconded by Councillor Galloway-Sealock. We'll need 2/3 of us. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. So motion to add for the in-camera meeting, including the additional personal item. Councillor Ioannidis, Councillor Galloway-Sealock. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Motion to adjourn, Councillor Schneider, Councillor Marsh.